What? He said, how many letters do you think I get from people a month? I said, I don't know, 200-300? He said, no, not even 2 or 3. When I get a letter, I act on it every time, and so does everyone else. And I was shocked. Now you can just spit out an email, you can put out a Twitter feed, you can do a Facebook post, but it wasn't like that then. And I listened to your latest podcast on the Vote Matt podcast, and they were talking about the Republican delegates in Kershaw County. And the lady you had as a guest basically said, pretty much if you show up, you can become a delegate, and we're probably not going to get enough people to show up to become Republican delegates.
Right.
I was shocked. There's not even enough interest to have enough delegates to vote on what the party wants to do.
Right.
That's amazing.
When she pulled out the paper that showed me the different precincts in Kershaw County and how many delegates they each have, I was like, is this the whole? I thought it was the whole state of South Carolina. There's 211 delegate positions in Kershaw County.
And how big is Kershaw County, population-wise?
Wow. 60,000.
Wow.
Maybe. It goes by percentage. So the delegates they're determined by the voter turnout in your precinct.
So the more voters, the more delegates you get.
Right. And it's 4% of the voters who actually voted.
And a delegate,
not registered voters.
Right, who actually voted.
Yeah.
And a delegate holds quite a bit of power,
absolutely.
And they're not even going to get enough on the first round to fill all the delegate chairs.
No, they have to have a makeup day to try to fill the other positions.
Yeah, and I listened to that, and I was amazed by that. And I don't think things are much different anywhere else when it comes to.
I think it's probably the same.
Yeah. And while I would say that if you don't live in Kershaw County, maybe people say, well, why would I want to listen to a podcast about Kershaw County? Well, because Kershaw County is St. Charles County, is Franklin County, is fill in the blank county, because they're all the same. And I find it amazing because just the influence that you have in a small place like that. I mean, everybody wants to talk about Trump and Biden, okay?
Right.
But like you said, what these guys do really doesn't affect you that much.
No.
I can't tell you how many times I've had people who are just they're very emotional about their politics, whether it's Republican or Democrat, whether it was Trump or Biden. And I said,
frustrated. They're so frustrated. You can't, we can't get anything done with the president and vote. I'm like, well, of course.
Right. But I've always told them, I said, it doesn't matter who's the president. First of all, none of them can hurt it or help it enough to make a whole lot of change. So just go with the flow and do what you have to do. But locally, you can make a big difference. You can make a big change.
Yeah. And the way it works is the Kershaw County GOP elects an executive chairman or chairperson, I should say. Mm-hmm. And that executive chairperson represents Kershaw County at the state GOP. Mm-hmm. So the delegates can get together and go to the state GOP meetings and all this. But really, it's that executive chairperson who has the ear of the chairman of the South Carolina state GOP. And he has the ear of the politicians, the Republicans on the whole, who represent the state of South Carolina, whether they're your local state reps or they're your federal, your senators and congressmen. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And everything flows up the chain from the local GOP. So if you have a weak GOP in your county, then they're not going to really listen to you. If you have a strong one, they will be calling you, wanting to come speak at your meetings and wanting to get input from you, because these are the people who are interested, who want to make something happen. Obviously, they want the optics because those are the voters and all that kind of stuff. But here in our county, it's a little screwy now. it's not really working the way it should be. And if you didn't take, like, I didn't even know there was a Kershaw County GOP organization that met once a month.
How did you find out?
Through our state rep, Vic Dabney. He's been a guest on our show a couple times. He started talking about it, and I thought he was talking about like way up at the State House, you know, at the Capitol. And he was talking about here locally. So he invited me out to his house. That's where I met Katie and a few other people.
Katie was the lady who was on your podcast.
Yes. And she became involved, and she was also shocked at how uninvolved people were in the process, how nobody knew what was going on and the type of decisions that were being made. And so Vic just wanted her to be introduced to me and vice versa. And so me and her started talking with her husband. And they have started meeting and trying to get people involved in the local GOP. And I said, well, look, I'll help you out because in South Carolina, the Republican Party has a creed. And on the next show coming out, it might be out tonight, we read the creed. Everything that's on there, if you read that and you didn't say Republican, you would think it was a libertarian creed. Small government, I am my own person, I'm responsible for myself, and this sort of stuff. And she's saying, like, you know, the people who are running it in our county now, they've only had maybe 2 meetings this year.
Well, is that because of COVID, perhaps?
That's what they say, but it's not. They just don't want to allow people to interfere in their agenda the way it's supposed to be. So we have some more work to do there, more information to put out, more investigations to do, because really they're just people who tried to run as Democrats and failed, and they just put an R next to their name, and now they get elected because we have 80% of the people in this county vote straight ticket. So if you're a Republican, you automatically you're getting 40% of the votes. And that's why it's important. And I asked, does the county GOP endorse any candidates? And the answer is, I don't know. We haven't ever seen anybody. And I said, well, they don't vet their candidates. They don't say, you know, yes, you have our support, or no. And they said, no. I said, well, they should probably do that. You know,
well, and I wonder how
conservatives.
I wonder how much of that is, and I hear this all the time. People need to get more involved. People need to, you know, take government, take control of government, so that having government can take control of them. But the truth of the matter is, the average person is just so doggone busy. They don't have time.
I mean, that's what I thought too. I thought, well, I don't have time, but I work 2 jobs and I take care of the homestead. And I run the podcast, 2 podcasts. The meetings are once a month, and it's about 2 hours of your time. If you show up to the meeting and you say, I'm a Republican, I have conservative values, and you know your values, and you're willing to stand up for them, there's no preparation needed for that. You can just go to the meeting and say, well, that's not right. That doesn't follow Republican principles. This is what we should be doing.
So
that's all it takes.
So in other words, it doesn't take as much time as one would think.
No, absolutely not. No. You know, if you're going to be a secretary or the chairman or the executive chair or something like that, and then you're volunteering more of your time, and that's understandable. But to just be involved and I don't know, contribute to the narrative, I guess it would be. That takes maybe 2 hours a month. You don't have to be in the whole social setting. You know, they don't have to be your friends. That's it. Just 2 hours a month. That's it.
That's interesting. I never looked at it that way.
And that's really the way our republic is supposed to work. You know, where you have a group of people and it gets divided, it gets, you know, chopped down, and you have somebody representing these other people. And how are they supposed to know? Like the way it works now is like, oh, I like that guy, so I'm going to vote for him. And then we just let them have, free range up there in DC.
Yeah. What's the statistic? Something like 4 or 5% of the people think that Congress does a good job.
Right.
But somewhere in the high 80s, they get reelected each and every time. And conservative friends of mine say, I have no idea. How can they keep reelecting Nancy Pelosi? I said, well, it's simple. The people like her. Well, how could they like her? Well, she does stuff for them. Well, I would never vote for her. Well, you don't live in her district.
Exactly.
So if you look at the people who are critical of politicians, it's rarely the politician that represents them.
Exactly.
It's they don't like the politician who represents the other guy.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not voting for that person. They are. So
right. This is one of the criticisms I have of Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. He's constantly on Twitter talking about issues.
He's your senior senator, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But he's on there talking about issues in other states, and I will tweet at him. I guess you tweet at him. Is that how you say it?
I don't know.
Whatever. And be like, hey man, like we elected you to represent South Carolina. Don't worry about what's going on in California. Let them worry about themselves. You worry, like, does this affect South Carolina? No, then you don't need to be involved in it.
Yeah.
Period. Like, why your opinion doesn't matter. Why are you wasting time on it? And he never responds, of course.
Sure. Well, now you did the Vote Matt podcast, and you were getting frustrated. And that's when you took a breath and started the Homestead podcast.
That's right.
Because that's something you really can control is your homesteading and your living off the land. I think your co-host Mike may do a tad more than you do right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he's a little bit farther advanced.
Mm-hmm. Because he's been doing it longer, to be fair.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Talk about some of the things that you and Mike have done, some of the out of the ordinary things that the average Joe wouldn't do. I mean, putting in a tomato garden, sure. I mean, I do that. I mean, but the stuff that 95% of the people wouldn't even consider, much less do. What are some of the things that you talk about as far as the Homestead podcast goes that you've actually done?
Things, our projects that we're working on is aquaponics gardening.
And what is that?
That's using natural fertilizer from fish. And it's basically a fish tank, and you put some agent in there that plants can grow on. So you have 2 layers, and you create a waterfall. And you just have a little pump that pumps like a water fountain pump, maybe. And you pump the water from the bottom. It goes up to the top. And it's like a swamp effect where it'll fill up and it'll overflow clean so that it filters all the bad stuff out and keeps all the good nutrients in that feed the fish. And then the fish poop, and that poop gets pumped up and put up where you're growing. And it's self-sustaining just as long as your pump keeps working. And your fish.
And I guess the media that the plants are growing on acts as the filter.
Yes.
Okay.
You can use like lava rocks is a big thing people use. They make some special clay balls that they're pretty expensive. So just get a bag of lava rocks. It works fine. And you're not trying to grow your whole plant in there. You're just sprouting. And you can grow your whole plants. You can get some pretty big plants, but let's say you're going to sprout asparagus, which are hard to grow. It takes years to grow asparagus to where it's edible. But you can grow asparagus sprouts and then sell them you make a really good return on your investment on that. Or you could, your tomato seeds, you want to put them in there, broccoli, whatever you want to start in your garden in the spring, you can start it in your aquaponics garden. And you just put it in there and let it go. It's real simple. Use 2 55-gallon drums. You can catch some bluegill out of the local pond. And you just maybe every once in a while, as you're getting started, you'll crush up some crickets and throw them in there.
Something for the fish to eat.
Right. And then that's it. In the wintertime, the fish need way less